Welcome to Good Screenwriting. I'm Trevor Meyer, and today we're going to talk about War for the Planet of the Apes. This review is a little bit late. It's been out for about a month now, a little over a month now, about 5 weeks, I think. So if you haven't seen it yet, you may have to wait for it to come out on home video, although there are still some theaters showing it. So if you haven't seen it yet, I would recommend you go see it as soon as possible. All right? This is a movie that blew me away in ways that seemed impossible. This is a series that had 5 movies originally, and then a reboot in 2001, I think, and then another reboot just a few years ago. And this is nobody expected this to turn into anything good, let alone fantastic. All right, so this may actually be the best Planet of the Apes movie ever made. And I say that not having seen the first one in a while. And I mean the original Charlton Heston Planet of the Apes movie. Let's review the course of the series so far. Planet of the Apes, fantastic movie, still holds up today, except maybe the special effects, but still, thematically it holds up today. Beneath the Planet of the Apes, meh. Escape from the Planet of the Apes was okay. What was it? What happened next? Rise? No, it wasn't Rise. Conquest. Conquest of the Planet of the Apes was okay. Battle for the Planet of the Apes was terrible. It's the worst one. Then they rebooted it in, I think, 2001 with Tim Burton. That one was okay. And then, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Rise of the Planet of the Apes happened. That one I gave a 5 out of 5. All right. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was next. I gave that one like a 4 out of 5. It didn't quite hit me the way that the first one did. This one, I am going to give a 5 out of 5. And it might be the best of the 3 newest ones. And it might be the best of all of the Planet of the Apes movies. Now, this is an interesting thing because I also gave Spider-Man Homecoming a 5 out of 5, but it's a different kind of 5. Spider-Man Homecoming is what I call an Avengers 5, all right? It's an Avengers 5 out of 5, meaning it's entertaining, it works on every level, it's funny, it's action-packed, it's got great characters, everything works. It's a 5 out of 5. This is what I call a Godfather 5 out of 5. It's not summer entertainment. It's sheer artistry. It's acting, writing, visual effects, themes, dialogue, all that stuff. All the stuff that you screenwriters love. It's not just summer entertainment. It's actual, real drama. All right? And the reviews are indicating this. The box office numbers are indicating this. But interestingly enough, I have a feeling Spider-Man Homecoming made more money than this one. Reviews-wise, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the direct comparison between the two is. But just on a sheer level of artistry involved in making a movie like this, I have to give it a 5 out of 5. And it's every bit as... Like, you forget the fact that it's a visual effects movie. It's a visual effects movie by necessity. Really, if they could have done this all with real apes, they would have. It's drama. It's a movie about bigotry and war and racism and freedom fighters. It's a classic war movie, and yet it's not really a war movie. It's a movie where a war is taking place, but just like with Toy Story 3, they realized you need an internal structure with this thing. It's a prison break movie. The second half of the movie is a prison break movie. All right? So, we're going to enter the spoiler section of the review. So, first off, I'm just going to say, this movie's fantastic. It's one of the best movies I've seen in a long time. I give it a 5 out of 5. Not an Avengers 5 out of 5, but a Godfather 5 out of 5. sheer level of creativity, artistry, performance, all of that. It's a summer drama. It's not just about spectacle. All right, there is some spectacle, but it's a real deep drama. Okay, so that being said, go see it as soon as possible because it's still in theaters now, or you can wait a few months for it to come out on Blu-ray. All right. Now let's go to the spoiler section right now. All right. I'm gonna say it's the structure of this movie that makes it really enjoyable because war movies are very often not really war movies. All right. Star Wars takes place during a war, but they're really kind of focused adventure movies. Um, just like how this is a prison break movie set against the backdrop of a war. All right? There's not actually that much war in it. Okay? So maybe Saving Private Ryan is an actual war movie, but most of the time, if you have a war movie, war is just the backdrop to a different kind of story. All right? Now, the cast in this movie is amazing. The characters are amazing. If you look here, front and center, you got Caesar. He's the main character. I applaud them for never actually making Caesar go dark. All right. I thought from every trailer we saw for Dawn and for War that he was eventually going to go dark and become cynical and mean, and he was going to turn into a villain and a dictator. And that never happened. He never becomes that character. He's always a good guy. He's always a freedom fighter who's better than his human opponents. All right? Just on a moral level, he's a better person than his human opponents. And humans are consistently the villains of the series. Well, I don't know about consistently. I think Koba was the villain of the second movie, and he was a chimp. Um, and they do bring Koba back in this movie, but maybe not in the way you're expecting. At the end of the credits of Dawn, you hear metal and wreckage being dragged away, almost like the followers of Koba have uh, taken, because he falls down an unconstructed building or partially constructed building, and we are led to believe he falls to his death, but the end credits suggest that maybe his followers were able to save him. That ends up not being the case. Koba really is dead, but he haunts he haunts Caesar almost the same way that Ra's al Ghul haunts Bruce Wayne in The Dark Knight Rises, where while he's captured and being tortured, he sees visions of Koba, and they have conversations even though Koba's not real, which I thought was a really fun way to incorporate his character into the film. Um, right behind Caesar, you see a little girl whose name ends up being Nova, who is the love interest for the Charlton Heston character in the original Planet of the Apes, which is kind of fun. And she gets her name from not the bomb or the celestial object Nova. She gets it from a little logo decal from a Chevy Nova, which is kind of fun. And then on the far right, well, let's go to the left here. Maurice, the orangutan named after Maurice Evans, who I believe played Dr. Zaius in the original movie, Caesar's ally, who's been with him since Rise of the Planet of the Apes. But on the far right, you got the guy who steals the show. He's the only one in this picture who's wearing a blue vest. All right. His name is Bad Ape. Bad Ape, named after the thing that humans kept telling him. Bad Ape, Bad Ape. And ironically, he's one of the best characters in the movie, as in he's not bad, he's very good. Um, he comes from a zoo, I think. So he was a zoo ape raised by humans, and that's why he's almost like the city ape stuck in the country. You know, he's got clothes, and he's not an adventurer. He's the Bilbo Baggins of the Apes movies, and they really downplayed him in the trailers, but he's like the comic relief of this movie, and I hate to reduce him to that role because I think a lot of times, when you think comic relief, you're thinking, oh, what, like Jar Jar Binks? No, this guy gets the biggest laughs of the entire movie. Every line that he delivers is hilarious, and he's played by Steve Zahn, and they just find him, and he's just the most lovable character in the movie, and he's such a dope that he's so clueless about the way that this actual society works post humanity and all that. But there's one guy who's not in this picture, and that's Woody Harrelson as the main villain, the Colonel in this movie. And my God, Woody Harrelson, who's always been in comedic roles, even in The Hunger Games, he was in a mostly comedic role as the mentor, who occasionally deviated into some real drama. In this one, he plays it completely straight. He's not a comedian whatsoever in this movie. He is the villain. He is the antagonist, although, as any good actor would tell you, he's not the villain of the movie. He's the hero of the movie. He believes that what he's doing is right. And you have to get into the villain's point of view that way if you want to write a great, compelling antagonist, a great opponent for your hero. So he's a guy who truly believes that humanity is on the verge of extinction and that he is a hero to the humans because he is going to wipe out the apes. He doesn't blame the apes for this. It's not their fault, but given a choice between humans and apes, he's going to pick humans and he's going to defend the humans. All right? Now, we know from the first movie that there's a virus going around that made the apes super smart and started killing off the humans, all right? Now, some of the humans survived the virus and they're what's left, and that's why the apes have kind of dominated the world at this point. But the virus has actually evolved in this film so that even beyond, so the people who got killed by it initially, they're all wiped out by now. But then the survivors now are starting to experience the next stage of the virus, which is it completely debilitates them mentally. And they start losing their ability to think and to speak, and they become primitive. So they're deteriorating in a way, which in some way feels contrived in that that's not what the original virus was. But if you really think about it, it's a virus that was helpful to the apes and deadly to the humans. But if you go way back to the beginning, you had the Jonathan Lithgow character who was James Franco's dad in the first movie. He had Alzheimer's, and then this drug that made the chimps super smart was supposed to be the cure for Alzheimer's. But then after a few applications, Jonathan Lithgow's character was worse than ever, and he had pretty much, de-evolved to the point where he was mentally gone. And that's kind of bringing it full circle, where they're coming here, where it's not the Alzheimer's that gets you; it's the reverse effect that this virus has on humans. It makes the chimps smarter, but it makes humans less and less able to communicate and think for themselves. So you could argue that this movie has a Deus Ex Machina ending, and that would seem like a flaw, but it seemed so perfect and so poetic and so what you would not expect that I have to go with it and say that it was the right move. In the end, you expect this big final battle the way that Caesar fought Koba at the end of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, where you have this big fight on top of a building and all that stuff. And when Caesar finally escapes from his cell and the other apes are escaping from the prison camp, he goes in to face off against the Colonel, and the Colonel has already succumbed to the virus. And we go in expecting this big, huge fight scene. He goes in and he finds the colonel in his bunk, having, consumed an entire bottle of some liquor, and he's in his bunk and he's completely lost his ability to speak, and he's become primitive. So there's no fight, it's more pity at this point, where you realize that the great irony of this is that the colonel has been killing his own people, and I believe, if I remember correctly, I haven't seen it in a while. Uh, he killed his own son, I think, because he had to contain the virus. He had to make sure that the virus didn't spread, and he was ruthless that way. And in the end, he's defeated by the virus, and he's not a hypocrite. He shoots himself. All right, he takes the gun and he shoots himself. So you could say it's an act of God that resolves the main conflict. However, I think that Caesar is an active enough protagonist that he does lead the escape from the prison camp, and he does lead the battle against the forces of this colonel. So I don't think it's a total Deus Ex Machina ending, and I think you can get away with it because it is poetic justice for the main villain to succumb to this, and Caesar still has to deal with the forces, the representation of this main villain, which is an interesting lesson for screenwriters that it's sometimes not always just the villain that needs to be defeated, it's the after effects of it. I would argue that in The Godfather, Sollozzo is the antagonist of the film, and he dies halfway through the movie when Michael kills him, but there are still consequences of that, and everything that comes after that is just what do you have to clean up afterward once you take out your main opponent. All right, so that's kind of what this is. The villain really sets things into motion, but then you have to deal with the after effects even when he's removed from the equation. All right, so I did really want this movie to end with the spaceship crashing, because in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, they talk about the astronauts that go up into space and then they get lost. So I thought, man, it would be great to wrap that around full circle, but I know that's not the movie they're making. It's too early. If Taylor and his guys crashed on this planet now, it's not the society that we see in the first movie yet. We're still very early on in the evolution of the apes and their culture, all right? And they're all still the heroes of the story. They haven't become bigoted themselves. They haven't come full circle and turned into the bad guys yet. The humans are the bad guys. The humans are always the bad guys. The apes are actually the more humane, ironically enough. So while I wanted there to be a spaceship showing up at the end with the astronauts, it was better not to. It made more sense not to. And this movie, again, spoiler alert, it ends with Caesar dying. So I do really feel like it's a trilogy. We literally begin with his birth and end with his death, all right? He's born in the first one, he lives in the second one, and he dies in the third one. And I can't think of any better way to close this story off and say, we're done. No more sequels. If you want to know what else could have happened to these characters, go back and watch the original. But I think this is it. I think we're done. And there was one reviewer who said this is the best sci-fi trilogy since the original Star Wars. And I can't dispute that. I think it actually is the best sci-fi trilogy since the original Star Wars. All three films are very strong. This is my favorite of the three, I think. It combines the best elements of the first two movies, which you know my theory about 1 plus 2 equals 3. You take the best elements of the first movie and the second movie, you combine them, and you get the third movie. It's got the heart and the humor of the first movie, and it's got the world and the drama and the battle scenes of the second movie, and you combine it all into a virtual masterpiece. All right, so 5 out of 5. I love this movie. I hope you like it too. You should go check it out as soon as you possibly can, especially if you're into. Look, I saw this movie with my brother and my mom. All right, and my mom is usually not the type who enjoys these big special effects films, but she's enjoyed all three of the last Planet of the Apes movies, and my brother and I have as well. It'll cross generations, it'll cross genders. It's truly a masterpiece that just succeeds on a film level, and I feel like almost anyone could enjoy this movie. My grandparents might even enjoy this movie. All right, so um, it's like the Shawshank Redemption. It's like the Godfather. It's not just summer entertainment. It's a true film, and I wouldn't be surprised if it wound up winning some Academy Award down the line. But bottom line, 5 out of 5. Go see this movie if you can. It is really incredible. All right. This is Good Screenwriting, and I'm Trevor Meyer. See you next time.